All right. I hope you can see me. We'll find out if I can hear myself, because then I assume so can you. Anyway, good morning. It should be Tuesday, and I'm slightly late because reasons. Mostly just my inability to, check the time. Yes, I can hear myself. That means you can too, if you are there. Let me look at the chat, and then we can get started with the whole, breakfast thing, and well, breakfast meaning tea and all the other stuff. Hey, Jen, how you doing? This well, probably late for you and early for me. Yeah, I mean, I got up like an hour ago and started trying to figure out what to do with this day, and made tea, and then I started rereading the first Mistborn novel, and yeah, that's a bad idea. But then again, I always have bad ideas, so who am I to, judge myself for that one? How are you doing over there in this place where I always worry to check the news when I wake up these days? No, in all seriousness, I hope you're doing good. I from talking to other people that live over there in those United States of Europe, or still hopefully still United States, I can, I've noticed that, there's a lot of like stress. So I hope you're not too bad over in your place in particular. And yeah, what else do I have to say? I probably need to find a print, or well, ebook copy in this case, of the first Mistborn novel, because I want to double check some things about the audiobook. But it's not that important right now. I just found it interesting because if it's not just a misreading in the audiobook, but it actually is spelled the way I think it is, then oh boy, why is there no fucking editor on this book? Wait, what have the stars done to? Are we talking like stars up there in the sky, or are we talking about famous people that they're mad at? I mean, they've always been mad at some famous people, but like actual stars. That sounds interesting. I mean, not that I put past them. So I have not learned about that one yet, but as I said, I would not put it past anyone at this point. Yeah. Hey, Britton, how are you doing? Are you already back in Oklahoma, or are you still in? Oh no, right. It's Monday night for you. It's not yet Tuesday for you. I keep forgetting. So you're flying when you wake up, I assume, right? And yeah, how are you doing? How was the trip to Florida, all in all, now that you're basically done with it? Did you get some more reading done now, like yesterday? Oh, the drones thing. Yeah, I've heard about that, but I didn't pay attention because, whatever. At this point in time, you just have to assume that there will be drones everywhere because they're cheap and everyone can have one. And yeah. A manned drone, a helicopter. That's interesting. I mean, I guess technically you could probably have like helicopters that are like, controlled by remote control like a drone. That is probably that I assume that will be technically possible, but I wouldn't know why that would make sense. Yeah, as I said, like I saw the headline about the drone thing, and I'm like, okay, they've seen drones somewhere. Big surprise. So I didn't learn about them sending in the wrong mistaking stuff for drones, I guess. But then again, I feel like drones are one of these like I feel definitely one of the technologies that are probably more disruptive than many others. Like you have like sometimes technologies that like do like a real big deal. Like smartphones were like a huge fucking game changer in a lot of ways, and I feel like drones in some areas of life and death, obviously, when you look at say Ukraine and other parts of the world where the people are currently doing war shit. Drones have changed warfare massively, and they will change other parts of life massively in a way that a lot of other technology may not have like such a direct impact. So I understand why people are sort of like worried about them on like a low key level that could lead to mistaking things. But then again, if it's the usual suspects, they are also just like overwrought, have like very overwrought imaginations in all kinds of paranoid ways. Well, I mean, your mom's birthday is probably was hopefully a nice occasion anyway, so I guess you can do with like without one more full reading day, hopefully. Yeah, yeah. No one's looking forward to advertisement drones, but I guess they're. It's only a matter of time until they become incredibly ubiquitous, I guess. Which, yeah, what you gonna do? I mean, yeah, dismantle capitalism, but when is that ever gonna happen? Um, but yeah, frustrating that. I did finish Metal from Heaven yesterday, and it is a wonderful book. It is really, really, really good. If you're into angry, anti-capitalist, queer subversions of Mistborn, is how I would say is probably the best way of describing it. Which is why I'm now already rereading Mistborn, even though I wanted to wait a bit longer. What with the Mormonism stuff, but I figured it will help me to explain why Metal from Heaven is so good, because it does all the things right, or at least a lot of things right, that Sanderson did not do with the first Mistborn trilogy. And that's partly, I would argue, because obviously he wrote those like 20 years ago, and things have changed in the last 20 years. So I'm not gonna blame him for those kind of things, but it's also like stuff he can't do because he's I guess I don't want to say ideological, but probably I should say ideologically incapable of going down that specific route. And I think that's such like an interesting thing because there are some very specific parallels between those two books in like plot elements and stuff. And I don't want to spoil anything here because Metal from Heaven came out 2 months ago, sometime in October. So yeah, I don't think most people have read it yet. But there are, as I said, some very interesting sort of parallels or refutations or subversions of themes that show up in Mistborn, and I do really appreciate that. Oh wait, that's maybe a reason to talk to your brother, I guess. No, that's good. If you had like a good time, then that's time well spent. I would argue. I should probably on that subject of family and holidays and shit. I should probably message my sister and figure out how we will be doing the whole like Christmassy thing. I should probably contact. I'm really bad at keeping in touch with my family and in general, but it's not because we not on bad terms. It's just that I'm really really bad at like I feel like our entire family is really bad at communications. So I don't call and they rarely call, and I just realized that like in a week Christmas Eve is in 1 week exactly, and I need to get my shit together if I want to know when to be where, because now that my sister and her husband and my niece are living in Germany, I assume a visit to either my mother or my father will be unavoidable. So I should probably figure out when those will be, for planning reasons. Oh, that, however, is, yeah, that's bad. That's make that. I mean, probably it would be easier for you to buy used copies in the States somewhere than for him to actually ship them from the UK back to the US. Like, what with shipping costs being what they are these days, it's probably cheaper for you to get new ones than for him to ship them. That's bad. So yeah. So as I like, that's why I started my a first reread of the Final Empire, and the first thing I noticed, and I was kind of surprised by that, but language-wise, style-wise, language-wise, I would argue that Mistborn is way more simplistic than Elantris, which was obviously the first book that Sanderson got published. So I'm like, did he start writing Mistborn before he started writing Elantris, or did he figure that going for an even more blunt and more direct and accessible style is a better choice? Because Elantris is not elaborate prose by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not as crude as the first Mistborn novel, which I found interesting. No, my sister got a new job in. Technically, it's the she lives like very far to the west in Germany, and she works for a different clinic now, and that clinic is technically in Belgium, I think, but it's kind of confusing because there's this like small part of Germany, like where Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium all kind of come together. There's like basically three states three countries coming together, and Luxembourg is also like half an hour away, I think, and somewhere in that weird area where countries kind of are all twisted up is where she's working now, and it was a definitely better paid job, so it felt like a good idea to move there, and I guess safety wise, it also was probably a good idea to move to move to Germany, and they moved like August, September sometime. I helped her move, and I think that must have been the end of August, I think, when I helped her move stuff. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the frustrating part is, of course, that my brother-in-law's family still lives in Israel, obviously, because they're Israeli. So I guess that's like the problem that you have with this kind of international relationships, families, is obviously that no matter where you move, one side of the family is going to be at least somewhat frustrated or sad or worried because you're you know pretty far away at this point, and internationally far away with all the consequences that can come from that. But what can you do? Um, Not much, I guess. So I guess, yeah, the thing will be figuring out what to do, or not what to do, but when to do things over Christmas, which is important because if I want to put up the winter holiday videos, and if I want to be better about it this year than I was last year with the whole Drizzt thing, where I did not get them all done as quickly as I wanted to because of on the one hand my camera dying on me, so I had to figure out how to record new stuff, and then well, you already know, Britain, like if you're hanging out with your family and there's a family holiday whatever going on, it's kind of hard to get time to read and record videos. So it would be smart if I would record or like pre-record the first 3 or 4 videos on Redwall, and I still need to come up with a cool name for that. Also, apparently, Redwall is now getting turned into a Netflix show, which is, I assume, going to be animated. I mean, anything else wouldn't make any sense, right? So yeah, that will be interesting to see if that will bring Redwall back, sort of like on the table. I mean, it's just like an interesting concept, and I wonder how well it will work nowadays, or like if it will reach like an adult sort of audience now. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you have somewhat anthropomorphic furry animals in a fantasy world or a medieval world in monasteries and fighting and all that stuff. And I can see this gaining more than just, being appealing to more than just 6-year-old kids who obviously are really into animals being boiled alive by in a siege, because kids are cruel. Um, well, Jin, have you ever read the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea? Um, yeah, that's the other part. There were always like rumors that some like Nazis hid in Israel. I don't know how much of that you can confirm, but yeah. Oh, and of course, you can always, for a very specific treatment of that situation, you can always read A Man Lies Dreaming by Lavie Tidhar, which may have something. I'm not gonna, say too much about that because it would be spoilery. But everyone should read A Man Lies Dreaming if they can stomach it, because it's a bit of a rough one. Illuminatus does have one plotline that may go in somewhat in that direction, but since Illuminatus has so many plot lines, it's kind of hard to keep them straight. I'm not surprised that Alan Moore and Grant Morrison like Robert Anton Wilson. I am somewhat conflicted on Robert Anton Wilson, but only somewhat. I mean, he was he was like an old school libertarian. The kind that goes more into like an anarchist kind of direction, and not the kind of libertarians that are now sort of the Libertarian Party. So he was not that kind of libertarian. More the I want to take all the drugs I want and you can't stop me kind of libertarian, I guess. In his old age, he did have some. In his last kind of couple of books, he did have some ideas or like opinions that I don't think have aged too well. But since he changed opinions fairly quickly, I don't feel, I don't want to judge him too harshly about that, because it's more like, yeah, you said that in 2005 or 3 or whenever he died, shortly before he passed away. It's like, I doubt you would hold the same opinions nowadays. I'm pretty sure he would have moved on from there by now, because he was certainly someone who changed opinions a lot. Yes, and that's the one where Hitler is a private investigator in London in 1939, as Mosley and the British fascists become leaders in England. It's a really good one. It's a really, really good book, but certainly somewhat out there. Yeah, so Robert Anton Wilson, Robert Shea, the first Illuminatus trilogy is certainly something I think is worth reading. Um, I feel it can be very overwhelming because it's deliberately written in a very antagonistic kind of style. It's, changing POV all the time. It is very much sort of like it is in that regard. I think it's anarchist praxis in that it is actively trying to create like mindfucks. It's part of Operation Mindfuck anyway, and it's actively trying to confuse you and create that point where you either believe all conspiracy theories or believe none of them anymore, because it's full of contradictory stuff, and mixes like obvious wrong, and not obviously wrong, but obviously made up bullshit with obviously true stuff. And so it's really interesting in that regard. I mean, it has like five different people in the book. I think five different people claiming to have shot Kennedy, which is just one of those fun things. It's like, yeah, and it doesn't actually tell you who it was, because that's not the kind of book it is. It just like presents each of them as the actual, assassin of Kennedy, and I'm like, okay, you just go with the flow there. So yeah, certainly the kind of book I highly recommend if you want to, have fun with weirdness, but you also benefit from having some general background knowledge of U.S. history in the 20th century. Mostly, I would argue, knowing stuff about conspiracy theories will probably also help. Um, it's just like so full of random, uh, yeah, just random stuff. And like every time I reread it, I recognize more like how broadly the references are. Right, it's the kind of book that makes jokes about Lovecraft and James Joyce in the same paragraph, and Tolkien and and other stuff, and then goes back into some serious philosophy because yes, why not? And lots of sex and drugs because it is still very much written in like the late 60s and early 70s. And that's the thing, like it mentions Norman Mailer only to make fun of him as part of the U.S. survivors of the sexual revolution meetup convention in Las Vegas, which is just one of those really bonkers ideas. I mean, sure, it makes sense in a way, but how many people reading this book today would even know who Norman Mailer is? Which is kind of bad because you should. So yeah, it's one of those really weird books, which is why I like it, I guess, because I'm weird. But it may also have plot lines involving Nazis, because of course it does. And you know, fun book. Maybe I should read all of those William S. Burroughs books while they're still available for free on Audible. And that's the thing, right? They they knew each other. Obviously, Robert Anton Wilson and William S. Burroughs knew each other quite well, and obviously Timothy Leary was another person that hung out a lot with, and the other way around, that Robert Anton Wilson hung out a lot with. So it's all plugged into that weird counterculture side of U.S. history in a lot of ways. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Mila is definitely worth reading. That's kind of the point. But he also was obviously deliberately using very explicit and graphic and language to sort of, do, I guess, literary activism and shock people in a lot of ways. So having him show up together with Hugh Hefner and others at that convention of the survivors of the veterans of the sexual revolution convention is just like, it's just like such a fun side thing, and it's just like one paragraph in the background of something else happening, because that's obviously always like 10 different things happening at the same time, which is how all that works. I've only read Naked Lunch so far from Burroughs, which is really, really good, but also really disturbing and weird and shit. And right now they have both the Nova trilogy, although I think there's only two of the three are free on Audible, and the other one that I always keep forgetting, Cities of the West. Is that what it's called? Um, Something like that trilogy. Those two are currently free or almost completely free on Audible, which is neat. And Audible says they're only free or part of their Plus catalog until the end of the month. So maybe I should, you know, just take that chance while I still can. All right, we've been talking for like half an hour. Shall we do the thing where we try to be active and communicative and productive and all of that stuff? And I'll be back at a quarter past. In case you are going to sleep, Britain, I will wish you a good night on, verbally and not just in text this time. But otherwise, I'll gladly see you guys in 45 minutes. All right, I am back. Somewhat delayed, but here we are. Hey, Derry, how you doing? Probably super late for you. Now that's super early for me, right? And yeah, I got sidetracked by trying how to figure out how to do alt text on Blue Sky because normally I don't post images, but now I had to. And I'm like, well, might as well try to be accessible. After all, I'm complaining if other people are not doing it. So that was interesting. Yeah, I did get stuff done, which I guess is all that I could ask for. How are you doing, Derry? And yeah, I did reply to comments. I did. One comment I was very happy for was I got a comment on like a very, very old video where I talked about how the Wheel of Time is sexist, and it's nice to have that old video still get some recognition from time to time because over the years lots of people told me I was reading way too much into those books, so it's always nice if someone goes, yeah, well, finally someone is saying the thing that I've always felt. And I'm like, yeah, I was feeling the same thing and no one was saying it, so I thought I better say something on it. Hey Kat, how are you doing? No lessons today as well, or just later? Yeah, in that case, well, knock yourself out, maybe not, but enjoy a good beer on me. That sounds like a really cool idea. So, yeah, I did edit, reply all those comments. The one thing I haven't figured out yet is, the part where I need to message my sister, but at 11. Well, that's nice. In that case. I'm sorry, Derry. I wasn't aware that I am such a scary person. If you're having a good mental health day, I assume that means that you're having mental health and not mental health issues, which is nice. Yeah. So I did do most of the things I wanted to do in the first sprints, which is good, and I'll use the second sprints to then, maybe do some more of the writing stuff. I hope so. We'll find out. Um, yeah. What can I say? I yeah, I still need to double check the spelling thing because the way that the audiobook for The Final Empire goes, the guy says, I told you I was boring, not clumsy, which is interesting because he said I was bored like a sentence before. And like, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I feel like either Sanderson as a writer should not do or an editor should catch. So I want to double check in the printed version if that's actually what's in there or if Michael Kramer by narrating the audiobook just like fucked it up, which is totally understandable. If you read those massive books, misreading something can happen, and not catching it on the audio later makes a lot of sense because I assume the audio editor will not go word for word and compare the text to what the narrator is saying, but is looking more for sound glitches and shit like that. So could be that. And before I mention that in any video, I want to make sure I get it right. but that's kind of the problem that I have with Wheel of Time. There is not that that there's sexism in Wheel of Time. It's like, sure, no worries there. My issue is that so many people claim that Wheel of Time is actually has lots of strong female characters and is in that regard better than other books of the time because it is basically almost feminist. And it's like, no, it's actually, I would argue it's worse than, say, what's it called? Ted Williams' Memory, Sorrow, Thorn, or something like of the sorts. It's not better. It's actually worse. And there's older books that got it, were better. I would argue, for example, that the Black Company series, which was published around the same time and edited by the same editor, that being um, Robert Jordan's wife, Harriet, whatever her name is, McDougall, I think McDougall. Harriet McDougall was editor for both Wheel of Time and Black Company at the same time. And if you compare those two books, and yeah, so I'm like, it stands out. So I'm always confused when people claim that it is feminist because it has women that yell, and I'm like, yeah, but look at how they're portrayed. Yeah, that sounds really productive though, Derry. Yeah, that's I guess like the most positive way or most charitable way I could read Wheel of Time is that Robert Jordan does think he's doing feminism, but is so far off the charts, which is just yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you had a good mental health day. It's sometimes shit's rough, so I'm glad you have that, and that's really productive. That's a lot of thing. Which reminds me, fuck. Britain asked me for a clip for something, and I completely forgot about that. I need to check if I have already failed the deadline that he gave me. But that's like the only weird, the only end of year, next year, whatever kind of collaboration I've been asked this year, which makes sense, I guess. So I should probably double check what deadline Britain sent me, so I can record that clip, whatever it was. Man, brain's a mess at the moment. I mean, I would argue that I would not hold up the Black Company as a feminist masterpiece. Obviously, it's not. But what I find interesting with the Black Company series is that relatively early on, it does actively sort of go against break the mold in a lot of interesting ways, including having the Dark Lord be a Dark Lady, which is interesting, right? This is still the 80s we're talking about here, and having female commanders and female, and this is being military sci-fi of the military fantasy in the 80s, and having uh, women be military commanders and soldiers is pretty solid, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's not exceptionally good, but at the time it stands out because it is it is exceptionally good for the times, I would argue. I would argue that at least probably from the second book on, but I would argue that the Black Company probably will pass the Bechtel test for every volume. Yes, sometimes women are arguing with other women about whom to kill, and the people they want to kill are men. But that's like, I think that's pretty solid for for 80s fantasy. So in that regard, once again, I don't think Black Company is exceptionally feminist. Just by not being incredibly sexist, it's already pretty good. And then later on, it goes into like it does have like interesting views on how sort of like fluid gender can be with some of the characters as well, which is, once again, this is still like an incredibly old white man. I mean, Glenn Cook is 80 now, so he was already like in his 40s or 50s when he started writing these books. So, good on him. But yeah, a lot of the older stuff is really bad in lots of ways, and but that's like the other thing, right? Now that I have started rereading Mistborn, and everyone loves Vin, and Vin is, but that's the other thing, right? Like Mistborn is in that regard is also really bad because yes, Vin is badass and can do all kinds of crazy magic shit and whatnot. But she's the one girl in a crew that is all women, that's all dudes, and the planning is done by dudes for most of the part, and then she gets married because of course she needs like a good husband as well. And I'm like, that's the 2000s, motherfucker. Um, well, since she's like basically, since she's all powerful, she's certainly very attractive, because, magic that she can use if she wants to. But she's also incredibly dangerous and all kinds of other stuff. Does she have a tragic backstory with a man? I mean, yes and no. Like she was the wife of the Dominator, and then she put him in the grave and resurrected herself to take over the Empire, which I think is certainly troubled from his perspective. I'd say, but it's not. As I said, it does get things right in some interesting ways, and then from then on, she certainly does run the Empire very competently, arguably more competently than he did before that, and stuff like that. So, as I said, like Black Company is definitely one of my favorite fantasy series of all times. I would argue I like it probably maybe more than Malazan, and it's just like very impressive in how it does constantly subvert reader expectations in interesting ways. And that's something that I really appreciate about Glenn Cook. Could it be done better? Of course, but sometimes we have to take what we can get. I can't get over that with Dresden Derry. I mean, the thing is, yeah, I can sort of see, and obviously you have to sort of differentiate between the character and the writer, but with Dresden, it's just so unnecessary in situations where I'm like, this is not Dresden. This is Jim Butcher putting in this. There is no need for the scene where Dresden sits in the treehouse and the 15-year-old daughter of his friend comes by in her goth outfit and undresses so she can change clothes in front of him. Uh, so her parents don't find out that she's all really into goth and stuff. That scene did not have to be in there. There were all kinds of other ways if you wanted, to get the information that, his friend's daughter is, rebelling because she's a teenager and all of that stuff. You don't have to have like a 15-year-old goth chick undress in front of our like 30-year-old main character. That is on Butcher, and that's sort of why I can't forgive the Dresden thing. I mean, I haven't read Fourth Wing, so I don't know about that one. I've certainly read books where men were like objectified. I feel like in a way, that's what Stephen Erickson is doing with the character of Ublala Pong in the later Malazan books, in somewhat of a humorous way, because it's, it's about subversion and about his massive dick, and him constantly being frustrated that he's just reduced to, just his physical attributes, and that is and how he and stuff like that. It's an interesting thing, because I feel like a lot of men I've talked to who've read those books were made incredibly uncomfortable by that specific character. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, but have you read any book, any fantasy book, and looked like actually thought about like how women were described there? So yeah, I would argue that that yes, Black Company is doing things much better than you expect from an 80s fantasy book. If that's enough for your personal experience and taste is obviously a whole other question that I can't answer. Obviously not. I think, like, and you're right that probably men can learn if they're willing to actually look at the whole objectification thing from while reading Fourth Wing, and I'm not just going like, it's romantasy, I'm gonna hate this no matter what. I'm pretty sure people can learn something from that. I mean, generally, reading outside of what you usually read makes sense, which is will open your eyes to those kind of things. That's just like how fiction works, which is, when it's good to read books by um, women, books by men, books by queer people, books by people from different cultural backgrounds, books from by people from different economic backgrounds, class backgrounds, and so forth, because they will bring different perspectives into your life. And part of the problem with fantasy is, of course, that for a long time it was mostly written by white dudes for white dudes, and you can tell that is still. There's authors who do better, and there's authors who do worse, and there's authors who are aware of the problem. At least at this point, there are. But see, here's the thing: is like, I don't think that Molly's behavior is the problem there. It's just like having the scene written in the way it is written is like there would have been other ways for Butcher to write that scene, I would argue. And there's like a bunch of these scenes where later, like Dresden's, well, it might still be Molly or a different character, and he meets them, and the first part of the description we get is that he notices that she has nipple piercings. And like, she's wearing a shirt, and yes, you tell me that the shirt is so tight that he can see the nipple piercings, and that happens like a bunch of times. Like, either you're deliberately trying to write an absolute fucking creep, and then people should not actually like Dresden because that's beyond just being, oh, or you should just like find other ways of doing that. Maybe it's Butcher being a bad writer, or it's Butcher just not understanding that, what he's doing. And I think it also kind of comes into the whole like, should Jim Butcher, a grown ass man, write Molly this way? Because yes, obviously, you relate to that and so forth. But I feel that there's something going on there where since we don't get Molly's inside perspective, we just get her behavior, right? Because we have, Dresden's perspective on that. That I think is part of the problem, because we need to judge that she's probably doing this because, she wants to appear more adult and so forth. And a man writing a teenage girl that way without giving us any more than just these sort of gratuitous scenes feels icky, I think, for me, because yeah, at that point she's just a very, just a side character in these specific books. I mean, she becomes obviously much more of a main character in later books and so forth. But at that scene, it's just, yeah. It shouldn't be. I would argue it should not be in there. But there's so much other stuff wrong with Dresden for me that I'm not going there again. To put it mildly. I mean, we like years ago, Cal, when from Something Good and Kind, from Very Good and Very Kind, when he was still posting videos and stuff, we started doing like a podcast series where we were talking about one Dresden book per episode with our friend John and us too. And sadly, only the first two were ever edited and uploaded. But yeah, it got more and more frustrating over time. Which is why I stopped reading them around book 9 or 10 or whatever, and I don't think I'll ever finish them. I mean, I still own them, and maybe at some point. But there's a reason I did not put that one up for like the winter holiday thing, because yes, I could do one Dresden book per day for like 13 days, and holy shit, would that be frustrating. I don't know what I only want to get upset about one book series or author per year. I don't think more. I don't think I can do more. All right. This is clearly the day where I'm really bad at time management and shit. But shall we do another sprint of roughly 45 minutes, and then I can run and maybe catch the bus so I can go to the gym? How's that sound to you all? Uh, but that's the point. He's not exactly a young man in that book. That's like already like a fifth or sixth book. He's like 27, 20. He's at least a decade older than Molly. And at that point, once again, there's more subtle ways of doing that, right? He can meet Molly in the streets somewhere where she is still in her goth dress up, right? And he can notice that, and she can, be flirty without just fully undressing in front of him, right? That's unnecessary, and that's what I'm saying. There, it's like it feels gratuitous in an unnecessary way to, get the message over. But that's a question. How many young male readers of Dresden actually take that lesson? I mean, I'm pretty sure the old readers of Dresden that are the big fans on BookTube of Dresden are very clearly not noticing how that's bad, and are mostly just shrugging it off and going like, "Well, but Dresden is a gentleman." But that's me hating. That's me hating BookTube, and that's why you are recording collabs and I am not. Unfortunately, it's just how it is. I guess I'm just a bitter old man on the internet now, which is fine. Anyway, let's get that sprinting thing done, or otherwise I'll feel even worse for myself because I don't even do the things I say I do. We don't want that. So I'll see you back somewhere around in 40 minutes, I guess, so I can have time to talk about stuff before I have to run. And here we are. I hope I did not scare you, Derry, if you're still there. Hey, Kale, how you doing? Oh, you went and cooked dinner. Hey, Kale, how you doing? I did write a little bit, and I started, I continued messaging people to figure out how these year's holidays are actually going to be planned and all of that stuff. So, moderately productive, I would argue. I hope you did good as well. Oh yeah, that. Now that's an interesting one. I mean, a cat with a chess game. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, right? Like you have like obviously that's not feminist if a woman beats a man at chess, but then again, there are male and female chess divisions and all of that, and for even weirder reasons, the International Chess Organization apparently decided that trans women cannot compete in women's chess, which is just about the weirdest thing they could have decided in this whole mess. Is like why have like male and female divisions to begin with? Also, how's testosterone helping potentially helping trans women to win a chess or be have unfair advantages in chess? I don't know. I guess I just don't know enough about chess culture to understand that one. I guess you were lucky then, Jin, that you did not, in fact, end up in the kinds of parts of the internet that you could end up today as a feral child, because they'll tell you what gender means in no uncertain terms. Unfortunately, in the wrong terms, But there's always a chance if you learn anything through the internet that you end up, in the Andrew Tate kind of part, and that would have certainly fucked you up bad. But yeah, let's actually end this. So I have a stab at getting to the gym in time. That would be, pretty neat for me today. So thanks everybody for hanging out. I did once again very much appreciate that, and sorry that today it was so messy when it comes to time and stuff.